So once more, the Democrats are onto Russia. Russia's interfering in the 2020 election, and they're now not only claiming that it's Donald Trump, but they're also interfering in the Bernie campaign. So it's worth talking about. First off, this came from the New York Times and the Washington Post, that Russia's interfering to help Trump in the 2020 election and to help Bernie in the primary. This comes from unnamed intel people. I've also heard reports, even Jake Tapper saying he's talked to intel people that say that this isn't true. So once more, it's just anonymous leaks from the intel community. We don't know if it's true or not, that this is what's actually been reported by the intel community. And even if this is what the intel community is saying, they're all inept or corrupt. Remember, the Democrats' official narrative, the establishment narrative, is the FBI and these intel people are so corrupt that they didn't know that they shouldn't manufacture evidence to say the exact opposite of what it does. But we have to trust them. They were wrong. They manufactured FISA warrants and illegally spied on Trump's team for over a year. But this time, trust them. They're right. They were wrong about the entire Steele dossier being credible. But this time, trust them. They're right. Russia's out to get us. Now, never mind on face value, this sounds ridiculous, because even if Russia was trying to interfere in our election, and I assume to some extent they are, we ignore the fact that China's interfering way more than Russia. And the Democrats have close relationships to China, such as Bloomberg, who has tons of business deals in China. Does this mean Bloomberg's a Chinese asset? No. But remember, they're trying to say that anytime Trump talked to any Russians proves he's a Russian asset. But when the Democrats have connections to the Chinese, like Feinstein that had a spy in our camp, no problem. Even though China's the bigger influence on our country. So not to mention that we don't talk about the influence that people in the United States unduly have, such as the mainstream media being 95% in the bag for the establishment Democrats. But that's no big deal. We just have to pretend that interference is perfectly fine. Now, if you happen to be Russian, then the exact same type of interference, only on 1/1,000,000th of a scale. Oh my God, you're interfering in the election. And then we have other problems, such as, if we're going to just look at that, why don't we look at the interference that our own intel agencies exert, such as leaking to damage Trump. Already we see that. This has been going on for 3-4 years now. We see that all the former heads of the intel agencies are hired by CNN and other places to go on and smear Trump. We see that they're constantly going after Trump in every way that they can. But we're supposed to ignore that and say Russia has more of an influence. I said this from day one. If we have a corrupt intel agencies that are trying to put their thumb on the scale of who should be president, that is 1,000,000 times more effectual and damaging to the United States and our election system than anything Russia or any foreign country could ever do. Yet the same Democrats screaming about that don't seem to care. Now, another thing that's worth talking about is the most effectual Russian interference into our system is easily the Kremlin-sourced info in the Steele dossier. Remember, intel leaders told us more than they wanted Trump to win, they wanted to sow division in our country because they probably expected Hillary to win. So they just wanted people to be distrusting of both candidates. That benefits Russia. So the very people that say, oh, you can't talk about Ukraine interference, oh, you can't talk about FBI corruption because that's Russia's bidding, they spread the most effectual piece of Russia disinfo for 4 years now, that Trump was a Putin stooge. That was so effectual that some reports show that over 50% of Democrats still believe Trump's a Russian stooge, even after it's been disproven by the Horowitz and the Mueller investigations. But we still have to pretend Russia, Russia, Russia. Now, what did I tell my friends on the left? I said, look, this is going to come back to bite you. Eventually, they're going to go after people like Bernie Sanders, and they're going to say, oh, he as well is a Russian asset. And I said, then where will you be? That's exactly what's happening. We see the report that came out from the Washington Post last night. Turns out they're working to interfere on Bernie's behalf as well. Now, Bernie, even though I'll stick up for him and say this is nonsense, he pushed this Russian nonsense when it came to Trump. Now when it's him, he's like, maybe it's just Russian bots and, we shouldn't take this seriously. So once more, we see Bernie fueled the fire. He was more than happy to accuse Trump of being a Russian asset for years. And now when it backfires on him, now him and his supporters are like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Yes, he's dealing with 1/1000th of what Trump dealt with his entire presidency. Russia, Russia, Russia. That's it, everything. Remember, Sheila Jackson Lee, the Democrat, was even saying the Iowa caucus. You know who did that? It was Russia. Everything is Russia. That's what these people claim. So now I'm interested, now that Bernie's being smeared, you see some of his supporters like, whoa, waking up to this is ridiculous. I'm not going to make fun of you. Join the club. It is ridiculous. This corruption from the establishment, from the mainstream media, and from the intel agencies is ridiculous. And they're going to go back to this well every election until someone steps up and starts to hold these people accountable. Meanwhile, they're driving us towards xenophobic conflict with Russia. They actually have the nerve to say that Trump and his people are McCarthyist. McCarthyist? These people see Russians under every bed. They're driving us to conflict with a nuclear-armed superpower. And they act like they're the party of peace. It's unbelievable. Now let's look at Trump's track record. Everyone says, oh, he's been light on Russia. No, he hasn't. He's sanctioned Russia. He's kicked oligarchs out of the country. He's done more for our fossil fuel industry, which hurts Russia more than anything, by being a direct competitor to them. He's attacked Syria. He's attacked their interests in other places. He pulled us out of the START treaty, the nuclear START treaty. He's been harsher on Russia than any president before him. Sometimes I think too much. But we're supposed to ignore all that and say, oh no, the Russians want Trump to win, despite no evidence. Now let's take the fossil fuel industry. If you're in Russia, right, and your biggest outsourcing, the biggest thing you could do is your fossil fuel industry, and Trump is creating a booming fossil fuel industry in the United States, and the Democrats are promising a Green New Deal to collapse our fossil fuel industry, who would you rather be in support of? Even if Russians were interfering, is it beyond the pale that they might pretend to interfere with Trump because they know that the media will pick up on that story and smear Trump? But we have to just uncritically accept, for some reason, Russia likes the guy that's harder on Russia than they would the people that would be like, hey, let's collapse the entire United States fossil fuel industry, thereby making Russia an exporter. Russia's exports in fossil fuels, the price would go through the roof because the demand would be so much higher. Does that make any sense to anyone? And the last thing I want to say about this is, okay, let's say Bernie wins the nomination. What are he and his followers, what are the DNC going to do then when they're like, oh, but yeah, Russia was interfering with Bernie, but they still like Trump more, so they're interfering with Trump more. It'll be interesting to see Bernie go back to that well. After he's been maligned in a similar but less severe way than Trump about Russia trying to interfere to help him, if he wins the nomination and he goes against Trump, him and his supporters and the media and the Democrats, they're going to go right back to the, oh, and Russia's interfering to help Trump well. And we're going to have to just forget that that's exactly what they claimed about Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's just utter nonsense. If you believe this Russia crap after being lied to for 4 years, if you believe leaks from the intel community after, one, these leaks have turned out to be incorrect for 4 years, and second, that we know the intel community is corrupt. I mean incompetent according to the DNC. They didn't know they weren't supposed to manufacture evidence. Then you deserve to be duped if you're going to continue to fall for this. Look, if you don't like Trump and you want to vote for a Democrat for a different reason, fine, we can have that discussion. I think that you're making a poor decision, but that's fine. But if your reason's this Russia crap, and if you still keep falling for this, you're a dupe. And you need to really think about how you're falling victim to this propaganda with any amount of critical thinking and common sense, which, is utter nonsense. So, hey everyone, thanks so much for watching this video. I'll be doing a live stream later tonight on my buddy Drone Tech's channel and SJG's channel. If you like this content, please click on the description. You can find links to me to places like DLive, where I'm going to start doing exclusive live content, places like Twitter, where I'm posting all the time. You can support me on Patreon and PayPal. I would really appreciate that. Would put that into my channel. And if you don't do any of that stuff, then clearly you're a Russian bot. So if you don't want the Russians to win, you have to support me. So click on that like and subscribe button. Thank you, everyone, and have a good one.